Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us here on INC Live for the UFC 302 preview show. My name is Karl Bainbridge. I am joined by the man on the right-hand side of my screen. He is the Paulie Walnuts to my Christopher Moltisanti. He's my friend and yours. It's Joe Neal. Joe, thank you very much for joining us.
What do you hear? What do you say? Um, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be the Bruce Timm to your Paul Dini, which is probably a weirder reference. Um, but I loved yours. That's awesome.
Well, I was thinking to myself, we're in New Jersey, The Sopranos, so I thought that made sense.
I should have done something like that. I could, but
I'm surprised there isn't any
I
kind
I
of like
had
New
a.
Jersey pro wrestling tag team.
I know
DDP and Canyon.
they could have done Vito and the Johnny Cakes.
Hmm?
No, I don't know if you remember that episode. Uh, oh,
We could
what's a
very
couple of
easily diverge this into a
love?
Sopranos podcast, but we are here to talk about mixed martial arts and UFC 302, which will be taking place next Saturday in New Jersey, as we mentioned before. And to me, Joe, it's going to be a bit of a fascinating card because obviously UFC 301 is in our rear vision mirror, and there was a lot of people out there who kind of thought that the UFC phoned it in, with combination of it being a Brazil card, was still in the fallout from UFC 300, which took away a lot of the sort of like big highlight reel Brazilian fighters. And I still feel there's an element of that to UFC 302. We still feel like there's a bit of a hangover going on.
I'm right there with you. This card, like 301, was kind of painful to purchase. I'll be honest. Like, because you have to it's one of those things where, you have to buy the card before you watch it, so you don't know what you're getting half the time. 300 was like a guarantee nab for like a lot of people, I'm sure. 301 was a hard sell, and I feel bad for Pantoja because that's not his fault that the UFC can't put a card behind him. Everyone needs a card behind him,
Yes.
except
And
except Connor. He's like the only one in history to never need a card behind him, but that's because he has like a lot of like casual and mainstream success. So
And I've always said as well that I think the times that the UFC should load their undercards is when you do have a champion that does need help. So, like, for example, imagine if you had Pantoja
yeah,
versus Usyk, and you loaded it with a lot of the big Brazilian stars. Like, that would have compensated for a main event that people maybe weren't all that excited about. I don't know why the UFC don't
yeah.
take this approach.
It's like when they did, they were really trying to, hype up the greatest women's fighter of all time, and they had Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz as their co-main event. Uh, you know, and then she went out there and knocked out her predecessor really quick. Oh, what? Did you just send me a notification on fire?
I was starting to reach for the off button there.
I was. You could, if someone, you can probably see me get the joke in my head and then mentally go, okay, whatever. I'll do it. Yeah.
In all seriousness, though, I actually do
Yeah.
bring that up in another context, though, because how many people do you think bought 289 for Charles versus Benny? That helped that card because the main event maybe didn't appeal
Well,
to most people.
I bought it for both, in fairness, I'm a Nunez fan. Like, I kind of looked at Nunez like Mighty Mouse. Like, no one cared about Mighty Mouse until he's gone. And that's sad. I kind of think, and Nunez kind of struck at the same chord with me. You know, um, that was kind of my vibe with her. That said, I was super pumped for Benny and Charles. I was more excited for that fight. I will admit that
Yeah.
for sure. Because that fight was shame it ended so soon, but that fight on paper was magnificent.
Yeah. And we're going to be expecting hopefully we'll get some magnificent fights for UFC 302. Before we get into the prelims though, there is one thing I do want to talk to you about, and it's a subject matter which I know you like to, flex your muscle on. Since we last talked about it at UFC 301, we're continuing to see more dramas regarding John Jones and his seeming refusal to defend the heavyweight title. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks since we last talked. Where do you personally stand on the John Jones saga?
Oh, he's shaking. I think he's shaking in the boots. I want to stress. If there's anyone in the world that is going to have a bias here, it's me and DC, right? Like, we're the only two guys on the planet that are going to have a bias in this race. Or if there's two people, it's me and him. But I just get the impression that he's kind of shaking in the boots against Aspinall, because he's recently kind of been like, you know, it'd be awesome, guys. Like, after Stipe, if I stuck around for one more fight, to fight Pereira, though. And everyone called him out. And he's now started kind of doing the stupid stuff of, like, yeah, well, how many titles are between me and Stipe? How many titles are between Pavlovich and Aspinall? Who cares about them? And it's just like the level of mental gymnastics he's doing to try and, like, downplay the threat of Aspinall is ridiculous. Like, I have more respect for Stipe in this, because Stipe, I think he was on Rampage. I think it was Rampage's podcast I saw the clip of, because everybody's got one nowadays. And Stipe was like, "No, Aspinall's really good. Yeah, he's really tough. Yeah, I don't care though. I just want to fight John Jones."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like he just said it straight up. Like, that's why he's not interested in Aspinall. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, I have a lot more respect for the guy giving his flowers and saying, like, yeah, I don't care though. Like, you know, well, he didn't say it like that. He said, I don't give a damn. Hell yeah.
And
You know?
this might be me sort of, like, I admit I'm not a John Jones fan. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't try and sort of be bitter about it online or anything like that. But I'm not a fan of the guy for a number of different reasons. And I think I'm trying to think of the best way to put this here. I've lost my train of thought. It's been a long day for me.
Yeah, I know the vibe. I fought a storm last night again. That was kind of fun. And then went to a comedy show, which completely wiped me out.
Was it Brendan Schaub?
No, because I laughed. Yeah, I laughed. Yeah. I was not the target on it. Like, I think it's a good sign. I won't talk too much about it to get us off track, but I will say I think it's a good sign of talent and a good comedian if you're not the target audience for the comedian and you're still having a good time. Like, I'm a straight guy, you know. This was a very much an LGBTQ friendly comedian. I admittingly purchased the wrong tickets for the wrong comedian. I thought it was Tim Meadows from SNL, and then I saw it after I purchased it. And I went, oh, this is a lesbian woman that just focuses on that kind of comedy. Like, I'm in the wrong audience. I asked my date, and she said, yeah, it's fine. Let's just do it. It's like, okay. I had a good time, and I wasn't even in the target audience. I think that's a sign of talent. But, yeah. If Brendan Schaub was there, oh my, I kind of want to see him live once, just to, like, I don't know. I feel like I would laugh afterwards more than in the building.
I actually nearly got tickets for Brendan Schaub. He was doing a UK tour and he was coming to Newcastle, and the tickets were only something like £30, £40, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to seriously consider this. It happened on March 2020, and I kind of thought to myself, is this God's way of telling me do not watch Brendan Schaub?
I really hope so. That reminds I don't remember. I remember when it was, but in 2013, 2012, it was 2013. I remember now. 2013, Oklahoma had a really bad storm. One of my exes from high school, like, wiped out her house completely. But I remember Limp Bizkit was in town, and no one went to that concert apparently. And all I could think of is Fred Durst sitting in his trailer, going like, "Man, Oklahoma sucks. I hate this place." Like because no one went to his concert because of the storm. And I was like, I really hope that's what happened with Brendan Schaub.
Even though Limp Bizkit provided us with the soundtrack to the greatest promo of all time.
Yes.
Juliana Pena versus
Myra.
Raquel Pennington.
Yes, and it's gonna happen.
Unless they do Kayla.
Like-
That's the one thing I'm a bit concerned about is the old fast track Kayla. God, I understand why the UFC would do that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she would win. I didn't think she'd win like that, but that's a scary chick right now. 135. That division looks fun right now to me.
Yeah. I wonder what changed since last year. I'm kidding. I am kidding.
I mean, there's only now it's like, hey, someone else has a chance of winning. Like no one else had a chance of beating the GOAT, the Lioness.
It's what's the old saying that my granddad used to say? The lid's off the basket and the crabs are roaming free.
Isn't there? I don't know if this is a culturally universal one, but when the cat's away, the mouse will
That's
play.
another one, yeah.
Yeah, like the lioness. It's cat.
We are really trying our best not to talk about this card, aren't we?
I just don't want to talk about Yelton Almeida.
Yeah. We will, though, talk about the prelims, though. You can see those on our screen right now. So I've picked out a couple of noteworthy matches, noteworthy fighters that we can maybe have a little bit of a discussion about here. So the one thing that really stuck in my mind was Cesar Almeida. So 5-0 so far in his MMA career, a strong kickboxing background, and he's getting the prelim headliner in only his second UFC fight. Is this a guy who has a real upside, or is this more favoritism towards kickboxers? Because the UFC do seem to be leaning that way a lot recently.
I think it's probably favoritism towards kickboxers. He was a really good kickboxer, though. Like he was the man. But he's got to take on a dude like Roman Kopylov, which that sounds like just a wonderful delight to me. That sounds like such a fun fight, and it's free. Like that fight should honestly almost open the main card, because Kopylov, Fluffy Hernandez was really good.
I enjoyed that fight. I enjoy striker versus grappler battles when I know that both can have success in either field. Like when there's a blatant sort of limitation with a guy's grappling, then it becomes a problem. But it wasn't as prevalent in Kopylov versus Fluffy.
Mm-hmm. I want an aggressive grappler, admittingly. Like if it's a striker grappler matchup, I'm like a little hesitant because sometimes we get Kopylov, Fluffy Hernandez. Sometimes we get Belal Muhammad, Vicente Luque too.
I thought you were going to say Waldo Costa versus Despain.
Oh God,
that was awful.
I mean, in fairness,
that to me,
that fight's awful, but that wasn't the worst fight I saw on that card.
What was?
Was it? No. There was a fight. Was it on the last Was it on the last fight night? This is how bad these two fights were. Where it was, I think they were smaller guys, and one dude just kept Holly home the other. That's all he did is just like Holly home the other, flip back and forth. And I was just sitting there, like I thought it was in the Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah, that was on the Apex card, the most recent Apex card.
Yeah, it was the Apex card. Yeah, that's right.
Just shows how disposable some of these Apex fight nights are.
It's a 300 hangover, man. I think it's legit.
Speaking of disposable Apex cards, Grant Dawson has gone from headlining one against Bobby Green, and now he's fighting on the prelims against Joe Solecki. Is this, again, the Apex cards just being so disposable that you could put anybody in there as the main event? Or is this the Bobby Green loss tanking his stock that highly?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think for the UFC, it tanked his stock pretty hard. And I think the Apex cards are disposable. Like, it used to be back in the day, there was like an upper echelon. There was a certain, like, almost weird criteria of ranking and name value to, like, put you on the main event for a fight night, you know? Like trying to think of a guy who was always like Matt Hamill was the headliner for a ton of fight nights, and he was on a ton of Ultimate Fighter finales. And it's because why? It's like, well, he is entertaining. Like he was an entertaining guy enough. And like Ryan Bader was on those cards a lot too, early on. Chris Lieben was always on those cards. So was like they had like a certain
Bisping.
like it's like okay they kind of Bisping like the king of fight nights main events actually. And Bisping was like, oh okay, like you're top 10. Okay, so you kind of check that box a little bit. Like they want you in the top 20, and then like, oh, how's your name value? And I think Bobby Green was the name value, while Grant Dawson was, in their mind, the ranking guy. And with how that fight went, you know, it's like, never mind, back to the bottom, Grant Dawson. I feel like that's kind of what they kind of did a Toy Story 2 situation where
I don't want to play with you anymore.
I don't want to play. Yeah, just dropped him.
That's a traumatizing scene, you know. Like with all the toys clawing, pulling Woody into the bin.
Yeah, that's probably, God, that's such a good trilogy of movies. Actually, the fourth one's still pretty good, but that's Toy Story 2 in that moment is like, oh my God, that broke my heart as a kid. I felt really bad about like toys I stopped playing with when I got home from the theater. I was like, oh, I should probably play with toys I haven't played with before. I feel bad for them.
Anything else that stands out for you on the prelims?
Nico Price, and Alex Morono. That's fine. You know, Nico Price is fun. Alex Morono can be fun. We both know where their ceilings are, so it's just kind of how it is. I feel bad for Nico Price because my two favorite recent moments of his was Robbie Lawler getting a walk off into the sunset like that. It's kind of mean. And the other one is, I know Pretoria is trying to dispute his. I don't think Pereira kicked him or kneed him when he did the backflip on him, but he definitely did the Nico Price. He clobbered Nico Price with that. And UFC, the guy, one of the fighters who says the UFC pays them enough, and he totally isn't being held at gunpoint. Jake Matthews fights Mickey Gall, who I thought was cut. I thought
he was cut as well.
Yeah, hey Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey Mickey. That's what I always think of when I hear his name. He walked out to it against.
He did, Punk,
yeah. So it makes sense.
And he's taking on Basil Chavez, who gave JDM a bit of a tough run for his money.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's like, let's get a name on Chavez's record, because I feel like they're probably gonna put some stock into him. JDM, that's really impressive when you think like, oh, you are like, some people think you beat JDM, and JDM just came off of making me look like a genius talking about the open side knee. You know,
a stop clock is twice. A stop clock is
broken
right.
Clocks
yeah.
twice a day. And listen, a blind squirrel finds that nut. So, yeah.
I am very marble mouthed today. I'm going to blame it on that bacon sandwich I had.
Oh, I used to make one myself.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I'm tired, and I blame it from the adrenaline of don't look stupid on your date. Don't look stupid on your date. Like, oh, I probably should laugh. Other people are laughing. No, I'm kidding. That was she legitimately, Ashley Garvin was her name, and she was genuinely very funny. Just we're not the target audience.
Well, we're certainly not going to be the target audience for a lot of people. I know there's some people who just hate watch this show.
I mean, it's usually
Guru fans.
I'm kidding.
So we'll try and keep this short and sweet then. We will move on to fight number 1, opening up the main card. And we are continuing to look into this welterweight action alley, as it were. So just looking at the prelims there, we had 3 welterweight fights. all involving, in my opinion, action fighters just sort of outside the top 20, 30 range. We're continuing that with the first fight on the main card. Randy Brown is taking on Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos. We'll just call him ZDS because it's easier for ourselves. He is the plus 130 underdog going into this fight. You can get Randy Brown at minus 155. So, two action fighters just outside the top 15. Do you think either of them can break through into the rankings, or do you think that time's passed them by and they're just sort of stuck in this sort of limbo, as it were?
I think either of them can do it. Honestly, I think Randy Brown's like one of the more underrated guys at welterweight because he can beat anybody. There's like that up until when you're in that action alley, I think he can beat anyone in action alley pretty easily. And I think he can, but he can also lose to anybody just easily. Action alley's just kind of in that like fun spot. It's funny how that's like the prima donna division, you know? Like you have Colby Covington, who's like, is there a fight? America, I'm not fighting. Like he's just kind of doing that.
Well, they call it welterweight for a reason. WAIT.
Yeah, that's fair. But then like you also have like this like nice little kind of a valley of sorts, where it's like, hey, these guys are all action, and it's kind of cool to see a guy make his way through that and jump into, you know, the top rankings with that same kind of mentality, like with JDM we were talking about earlier, because he went through like, you know, like he fought like Randy Brown and Kevin Holland, who's also on this card, which is weird. I always forget he fought Kevin Holland. But Randy Brown's good. Like I think he's really good. He's kind of hard to deal with. From multiple areas. He's a good grappler. He can strike, and he has some oomph on his shots. His last fight was a KO. But ZDS, so much fun, and I want him to break into the rankings.
Because there's a lot of intangibles about ZDS, which I am very excited by. There was once upon a time he was a very highly regarded. Like he won something like 6 or 7 fights in a row, and then had that loss against the Leech, and that was probably the Leech's best performance I've seen in the UFC so far. And I just don't think he ever really regained that momentum. But you look at some of the people that he's beaten and the way that he's done it. Like he beat Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, admittedly, BSD was fighting in his UFC debut on short notice, and it was that awful fight where the Russian referee refused to stop it. Like one of the worst referee performances of all time. And he's also got wins over Curtis Millender, Sean Strickland back in Brazil, and that was like a spinning wheel kick, highlight reel knockout.
That clip's been popping up everywhere recently because they're both on the same card again.
Also beat Max Payne Griffin, and the one that really stands out for me is 3 of his wins in the UFC have come against Dagestani fighters. Like, I'm personally counting the Renat fight as a win because I don't know what people say. He finished Renat in that fight.
He absolutely did. I don't understand.
And it was in Brazil as well.
It's like I was like going in Brazil where it's like it's more likely the ref have to have been overcorrecting himself. I don't understand that one, but he did finish him. So like he might as well have.
So maybe he has the cheat code. Maybe he know. Dustin needs to get on the phone to him now. Ask for his advice. He's
the anti-Dagestani. He has that kryptonite for him. It turns out it's capoeira. Like, never would have guessed that style would be good against him. But
so we'll talk about Randy Brown in a little bit more detail in just a few moments' time. We're talking about ZDS now, so I thought normally we go with the higher build fighter first, and then go to the second one. But we're talking about ZDS now. What is it about his style that you think got people so excited? What is his sort of X's and O's?
I think, well, he's a capoeira fighter. That's what I always kind of think of him as. Like, he has good punches, and he has good, like, traditional strikes, but he'll just, like, throw the wacky, wild stuff out of nowhere. And not quite Yair Rodriguez, everyone's freaking out. Like, it isn't to that level. Like, because there was a period of time where Yair Rodriguez, it's like, is someone looking at me? I'm going to spin. and he would just spin like randomly, and it made no sense in the context of the fight. But who cares? Because it was awesome. Like, you know, I feel bad for that BJ Penn fight, but that BJ Penn fight is so much fun to watch. Like, if you just pretend it's someone else. Uh, but ZDS, like, oh yeah, like he has the wheel kick against Sean Strickland. That is a clobbering of a shot, and it somehow didn't put Sean Strickland out on the kick itself. Shows you how thick-headed that guy is.
That's a compliment.
It's a compliment and a critique. And honestly, that makes Bejeda look insane, because Bejeda did take him off the ground, but that's a topic for another, probably a later fight we have coming up. But ZDS, man, he's like, I just think like Capoeira. I just, that's all I think about. I'm expecting him to throw like an Izaguri. I'm expecting Randy Brown to catch the leg, and he does the old classic Japanese pro wrestling where he grabs the hair and then like while hopping on one foot, then kicks with the other leg. I just think of I think of a lot of spin kicks and a lot of just fun striking, but he can grapple. He can like fight traditionally. His fight with Curtis Millender I really liked. His fight with Benoit Saint Denis. That's a ridiculous fight that gets ruined by the ref.
It's interesting you sort of bring up Capoeira. I do agree that he does have elements of Capoeira to his game. I think he's more of a sort of a traditional Muay Thaiist, but just adds in the sort of spins and the sort of. I mean, he's not Eddie Gordo. He's not like a Michel Pereira type that's going to be ridiculous like that. It's sort of like, it's on the whole, it's a little bit more restrained, but just as his moments of just bursts that just give that sort of stereotype to him that he's purely a Capoeira guy.
It's the highlights probably.
Yeah.
Because I feel like whenever I watch him, I just can't get that in the back of my mind. It's like, where's the spin coming?
Yeah, and I think maybe that unpredictability is part of the reason why he's had so much success against the Dagestanis. Like he's giving them something that they're not prepared for.
Dustin Poirier, start spinning, dude. Please.
Can you do a spinning guillotine?
Is there such a thing?
I have though noticed a few weaknesses to his game though. I think that even though he has this heavy overhand right, and it probably is his best weapon in my opinion, he does have a tendency to overextend, which does set up the takedowns, and Randy Brown in my opinion has a solid wrestling game and could exploit that. And I think when he is forced to brawl and he does get into the exchanges where it's quite tight in the pocket, his technique gets a little bit loose.
Yeah. He's a little wild. He's down to brawl. He's down to let it rip and start swinging hands, and that isn't necessarily probably the smartest thing against Randy Brown, who can fight either like on the feet. He can take you down and grapple with you. So definitely that overextension is a threat for sure.
So we'll talk about
for him, for his own game, not again. The overextension isn't a threat for Randy Brown, but it's a threat to himself.
Speaking of Randy Brown, 18-5 record, 7 KOs, 5 submissions, 6 decisions, so pretty much an all-rounder when it comes to how he's finishing his fights. And notable wins, you talked about Action Alley, the welterweight division. This guy has fought and beaten pretty much anyone who's inside of it. So you got Muslim Salikov, Wellington Turman, Francisco Trinaldo, like standout boy material Trinaldo, I love that guy.
Oh yeah.
Chaos Williams, Cowboy Oliveira, Wally Alves, Brian Barberena, and Mickey Gall.
And he's fought, and his last 3 losses are guys who were in Action Alley, like Vicente Luque, that makes sense, Nico Price, who's still in Action Alley, and JDM, who kind of rose out of it.
Yeah. I was just checking to see whether or not you'd mentioned the Bilal loss as well, but then you mentioned still in Action Alley.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bilal wasn't in Action Alley. He was just passing through. It's super funny because that's a guy who I root for to finally get his title shot and lose because I just don't want him to be champion. I don't want to watch him fight.
I'll be honest, I'm sort of kind of me really wants Bilal to win, just as sort of like a big FU to the UFC.
That does sound really funny. You almost convinced me with that one, but then I remember I'm the one that's got to do the recaps.
There's a reason I contacted you, Joe. There's a reason I didn't want to do the recaps anymore.
Yeah, you're like, hey, you want to do the recaps? And it's like Vicente Luque and Bilal Muhammad 2 you're looking at. You're hired. That's my. I feel like a 1950s poster of like a monster movie where like the lead actress is in fear, and it's just Bilal Muhammad like 48-0 decision streak.
So, the reputation of Randy Brown for a long time has been that he's a very good rangy striker, but that anything outside of that, be it the leg kick game or be it the wrestling, there's limitations. Is that an unfair judgment, or is there more to his game than just being an outside striker?
A little bit unfair, because against JDM, he was throwing a lot of low line kicks to the leg to try and keep JDM out. Because you and me predicted that JDM was going to have unless JDM is as good as they say he is, everyone's going to because everyone has a little bit of moments of struggle against Randy Brown, no matter who they are. Like Bilal Muhammad did, Luque did for the most a little bit. Luque did, JDM did until he kind of started getting his range and timing, and put him down. But Randy Brown was throwing a lot of low line kicks, was circling really well. And then like he is best when he's on the outside, but I don't think he necessarily has any glaring. I don't think he has glaring weaknesses. I don't think it's that bad. I think there's things that like, well, he's not the best at, but I don't think he has any like giant holes in his game.
I think if he does, there's two of them. I think that because he uses quite a wide stance, he's quite vulnerable to leg kicks.
Low kicks makes sense.
And if you look at some of the guys that have beaten him in his career, they're all guys who did pretty much the same thing. Pressure him backwards and force him to fight in the pocket. It was something that JDM did, Luque, Nico Price, Bilal Muhammad all did the same thing and managed to find success against him. So I think that is something that Zaleski dos Santos could maybe try and utilise. But then again, he too is another guy who, in my opinion, works best at distance.
Mm-hmm. The Nico Price fight is very interesting with Randy Brown because everyone always talks about the finish. No one talks about the full fight. And Nico Price is pushing Randy Brown back for a majority of that fight. And I think that's interesting. I'm glad you brought up that fight because I watched that fight this week for my research. Mostly because I wanted to see the finish, I'll be honest. Because that finish is ridiculous. I like Randy Brown over Nico Price. Like if I have to be a fan of one or the other, it's Randy Brown. Like that for me. But that finish is ridiculous.
Wasn't that part of like a run where Nico Price was just getting these really bizarre knockouts?
Yeah, he had that, and I think on that same run, he flailed with his legs and knocked out and caused a slight gust of wind that knocked out James Vick. Poor James Vick, honestly.
And he
legitimately poor James Vick.
Like James Vick gets a really bad rap from fans, but there was once upon a time he was a legitimate top 10 lightweight.
Yeah, he was he was I think the favorite in the Gaethje fight. I think
he was.
It's been a long time, but and if it wasn't for him talking, people would have probably been like, I hope he makes it. But I think him talking, him not being a very good talker, first off, hurt him. And I understand, get out of your comfort zone and try to make things work if that's what you want to do. Sure. That's the approach you want to take, sure. So I can't really fault him for being a bad talker. But it's who you talk to. Justin Gaethje is one of the most beloved guys ever, and you can't talk about him like that, calling him the Homer Simpson of MMA, because we like that episode. Also, Homer Simpson got a heavyweight title shot. No one gonna talk about, his only loss on his record was because of a fluke. His bartender / manager and trainer came in on a on what is it called? The giant fan flying machines.
I still have issues with the boxing commission, for keeping the belt on Tatum, even though he was in prison.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean,
That's
I
John
thought
Jones'
I thought
privilege, that.
yeah, that's definitely that's Dana White privilege. I one thing I thought was weird was when Dietrich Tatum lost all his money, they let him keep the heavyweight title, and he was fighting tigers in Vegas. I don't know if you remember
I
that.
do. I try and blank
Yeah.
out the sort of season 12 onwards.
12 is it's not great, but
So do we have a winner for this fight then?
I this one's hard. This is probably the hardest one to pick for me on this whole card. Because for every other one, I have like a snap impulse. Oh, this person should win, right? This one I really don't, and I've kind of gone back and forth about it for a while. I think I I like Randy Brown here. I think his boxing is a little tighter. If I was ZDS though, I am launching every low kick I can to take away the movement of Randy Brown. But Randy Brown I think is a little tighter on the feet, and I think he can force the I think he has the grappling advantage. And I'm and that's kind of probably what tips me over. In my head, I think he's the one that can force the fight to the ground if he has to, and ZDS does leave himself open to the takedown. Then again, he is the Dagestani kryptonite. I still think Randy Brown.
I'm leaning towards Randy Brown as well. I think the leg kicks are a bit of a concern for ZDS, but I think Randy Brown has the grappling advantage, and I think he also has the age advantage as well. I think ZDS is 37 now. So you wonder if there's starting to be that physical decline. So I'm probably going to go for the safe option here. I'm going to say Randy Brown by decision.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. I don't think there's a finish in this fight.
Yeah. Will there be a finish in our second fight here? You have to brace yourselves, Joe. This one is going to be tough to talk about. It is Jailton Almeida, the number 7 seeded heavyweight, taking on Alexander Romanov. Jailton, a big favourite for this one, minus 300. You can get Romanov in at plus 240. Now, I want to start this little segment with a bit of a disclaimer here. From the social media I've seen, from the interviews I've seen, Jailton Almeida seems like a thoroughly decent chap. Speaks well, family man, sort of shows himself in a pretty decent manner. With that being said, he may, in terms of fighting style, be my least favourite fighter on the roster.
I mean, I feel like this is like a hater attitude because I think because he developed the cheat code for MMA, the greatest fighting style of all time. No, I find him to be really entertaining in the first 30 seconds of a round. It's very entertaining for me because it's like, is he gonna do it again? Come on.
It's a bit like Breaking Bad, isn't it? Aaron Paul, Breaking Bad. He can't keep getting away with this.
It's kind of, I got to be honest, as messed up as it is, it's kind of grown on me. Like it's kind of become like a comedy of errors. It feels like satire watching his fights at this point. This is my Joker arc. This is the arc where you have to send me to a psychiatrist because I'm like I only want to watch fights where there's a teep kick into a double. Like it's the only thing I want now. Like it's kind of funny watching him fight. I mean, I had a lot of fun watching the Curtis Blades fight. Every minute of it, even I was cracking up in round 1. I was like, oh my god, this guy's gonna do it to Curtis Blades. Like this is so funny because I was rooting for the meme that Jailton Almeida is the one to beat John Jones with the teep kick double leg. I was hoping and praying, and then Almeida gets KO'd by Curtis Blades, and I went, oh, that's even funnier. Like that's the funniest thing I've seen, and I was clapping and cheering. I probably cried because my curse was broken for a little bit. Now I'm like, oh, dude, I'm back in on this. I want him to teep kick the world. That that would be a great shirt.
Team
Teep
kick
kick,
the world.
yeah, teep kick, double leg the world. Oh my god,
DM him, and put in a
I
design.
will. Yeah, I know a graphic designer. I might be like, hey, you want to make this shirt and try and sell this design to this fighter? Like, I know a graphic designer. Oh my god. I wouldn't even want to get paid for it. I just want to make sure like other people buy it so they can join my curse.
The thing is, as well, with Jilton, in all seriousness here, like, my issue isn't necessarily with him. It's a strange, but I don't
Yeah.
think that he's the problem.
Oh, he's a nice guy. Really nice guy, actually.
My problem is that here we have a guy who has this incredibly one-dimensional style when you know exactly what he's going to do. But because the heavyweight division is so bad and so unathletic, he's able to get away with it. Like, I don't fault him for taking the easiest path to victory when it's available to him. But I think to myself, if we had somebody doing this, like shooting halfway across the cage on his knees, and you do that at bantamweight or featherweight, you're going to get
Getting
eaten
killed.
alive. But he's able to get away with it because the heavyweight division's that bad.
It's like a parody, you know? It's like a comedy. Like it feels like satire of MMA. Like it's astounding. And he does seem like a genuinely awesome, very nice man. And so I'm never gonna hate on him, the person. But my God, it's so funny how long this has worked. Because it was like what, 6 fights, 7 fights in a row where he just did it. Because I think around the third and fourth time we all were like, has he done this every fight? Like, wait a minute, like. And then he just kept doing it. It's incredible. Brandon Moreno won Alexandre Pantoja beat Brandon Moreno with that. Not really, but
You want him to, though. You want this to be the new.
I want the new meta of MMA. Like, what if he figured it out? Like, that sounds so funny.
I will say the one thing that I think the UFC have done, which I will give them kudos for, is, and I think this happened ever since the Derek Lewis fight, which was quite rightly shat on by a lot of people. They are matching him up with other grapplers. I don't think they want him doing that again to strikers. And I think that's part of the reason why the Romanov fight's been booked.
Wasn't it Pavlovich first, though?
No, I'm trying to work out how
Or was it Volkov?
I think it was Volkov.
Let me see. It was Volkov.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was originally Volkov.
And then, of course, they put
Volkov
Pavlovich
said, like,
versus Volkov together for Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, monetary reasons for that as well. But I think the UFC did the right thing changing these around.
I mean, in fairness, I remember Volkov going, really? Because I didn't sign up for it. They just kind of did, what fight was it that recently that they were like, I didn't know I was fighting. Oh, it was Benoit Saint Denis.
And Poirier.
And Poirier, ironically enough. Where they were like, I like how they were talking about us. They haven't even sent me a contract yet. It's like, well, they kind of did that again here. We're catching on to their ways. UFC.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that Connor hasn't even signed the Chandler fight yet. Like, that would be really fun. I would actually be very incredibly angry with both of them again, but it would also be kind of funny in hindsight because of how thirsty Chandler is for that fight.
Yeah. There are a lot of people out there that think that this is just going to be another Jilton destruction. Is there something that Alexander Romanov provides to make you think that could be, he might just sort of shake things up a little bit? I mean, the guy does have a good grappling background in his own right.
He does. This is kind of a tough one because on one hand, we're professionals. We take things. We try and, even if we think a fight's going to be incredibly one-sided, we try and make it appear as like, one side. Here's the pros and cons of them in this fight and all that. So on one hand, part of me is like, oh, okay, be the professional here and just talk about like, oh yeah, he could slow him down and all that. But the other part of me despite the fact that like in the recaps and in the retro reviews, I play a little bit of a character. On here, it's just Joe for the most part. Uh, and I'll just be honest, Romanov was so boring; it was kind of hard to research him. Um, I think he has a little bit of a chance at stopping the Teep double leg, but his last fight, I think, has admittingly put a little bit of the last fight I saw of him, when I was doing my research specifically, the last fight I watched was him and Juan Espino. And I was like, oh, this fight's rough. And it's kind of soured me on him a little bit, especially with how that fight ended and everything like that, which I don't blame him for. He took a shot low. He might have been looking for a way out, but I don't know. I wasn't the one that was hit there. As guys, we've all been hit there. It's it's a horrible time. I can't imagine what a heavyweight hitting you there feels like. So I'm kind of torn because part of me goes, oh yeah, like the professional in me is going like, no, he legitimately has the tools to stop at least the double leg, but not the teep kick part of it. The other part of me was like, is going, oh, that was not a fun research. I don't know if he could do it, but it's kind of a weird one for me.
Yeah, I think from doing my own research with Romanov, I can understand why there's some people that might think he has a chance of stopping teep kick the double leg, but I'm not as sold on it as other people are. And I say this for a few reasons. I think that looking at Romanov's background and a lot of the takedowns he goes for, a lot of it is trips and a lot of it is throws. So it's more like a sort of like a Greco style. But when you have a guy that's shooting in from such a long way out, you're not going to be able to react and get the takedowns and be on top in the way that a guy like Romanov normally does. I think if he was another sort of like orthodox freestyle style wrestler, he might be able to do so. That was what Curtis Blades was able to do in that second round. He was able to sprawl, get Jilton to only grab for one leg, and then just hammer in the ground and pound on the side, and just Jilton wilted. But another big issue though is, well, there's quite a few of them I feel with Romanov, unfortunately. I don't think he has the cardio outside of the first round. So if he does go out the first round, I can see Jilton's takedowns becoming a lot easier. And also as well, I don't think the guy is athletic enough, and I think he does wilt when he's under sustained pressure. We saw that against Volkov. It was almost like, I haven't got the takedown, oh god, what do I do now? And the moment Volkov hit him with just one or two punches, he wanted out.
Yeah. I think another thing too, I think you need against Almeida is I think you need some decent hands. At least 7 out of 10
to spook him, just something to spook him.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't need to be able to blast him, but Curtis Blades, when he put the hands on him, it was like, oh, okay, like I can do something with this here. I don't think Romanov has that kind of hands to be able to do that. So, and I think that makes it an even bigger uphill battle for him.
Yeah. I will say one thing that always sticks in my mind from watching Jilton versus Curtis Blades. You know how Dean Thomas, they usually go to Dean Thomas at the start of each round, and he sort of like dissects what the corner was telling him. I do remember him being quite critical of the corner advice that Jilton was getting. And just before Jilton shoots for the takedown that ends the fight, Dean just basically says, "You have to punch!"
And then, and just, that fight's so funny. Like, that fight I want up there with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, that's my Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
In what way?
Because that fight's so funny to me. Yeltsin Almeida fights have just become comedy. Like, I feel like I'm legitimately going insane here. This is my like path to the dark side. I'm gonna come back with a Brendan Schaub shirt. Like, oh, it's just a bit, Karl.
I've got stats.
He just feels like a whole comedy, because with the. Like, because this wouldn't work, like you said earlier, this wouldn't work in any other division except heavyweight, and it kind of feels like we're making. I feel like his style is actively making fun of the heavyweights.
It is.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of mean, but kind of fun.
I actually did some research there on the Blades versus Jilton fight. Jilton threw 3 strikes in that fight and landed 1 of them.
Oh, that's amazing. And it was a teep kick. Right? Like it had to have been, right?
I don't know. I
I
think he shot without the teep kick. I think it was just during at the start of the second round when there was that brief exchange.
I think it was that.
Yeah.
That's still so funny to me.
So I'm going to assume you're going to be picking Jilton to win this one. The question is, does he do it by submission or does he go the distance?
Man, I feel like the safe pick is decision because he couldn't tap out a gassed out Derek Lewis on the ground in the championship rounds, and that's pretty alarming. That said, I don't think one fight where he couldn't get it done like that should take away from the fact that he is a legitimate submission threat. I am going to go submission in round late. I think middle to late round 2.
I'm going to.
I think Romanov will like that.
I personally think it could be the first round. I just have real question marks about what Romanov's going to do when he's on his back, and also that's just sort of sustained pressure. And I do genuinely think, all jokes aside, I think Jilton will try and open up a little bit with the ground and pound. I think he will take that on board because the other big thing you need to realise as well is, whether you like it or not, there is a marketing media side to the sport. And if you are the heavyweight wrestler who never punches, the UFC aren't going to give you a title fight.
Looking not of Loyev as well.
Yeah.
But Makhachev.
Makhachev's in the same boat as well. Like, I honestly believe that part of the reason is, I know they're doing him versus Manel Kape, but they're also doing Alex Perez versus Tyra. And I genuinely do think that if Makhachev does stink up the joint against Kape,
back up.
They'll go to the winner of that one.
I mean, Alex Perez turned it around in his last fight.
He did really well. And I think the UFC like that activity as well. They like guys who are fighting every 2-3 months.
I want Manel Kape to beat Makhachev for a multitude of reasons. I don't really like Manel Kape, but he's very fun. And I really like that first fight with him and Pantoja. So, I don't know. Flyweight's interesting, isn't it, compared to heavyweight?
Very interesting.
How awesome was Steve Erceg? Like, that guy's amazing. Turns out he's awesome.
It's like people have only just realized that. Like, if you watched all of the Apex prelims, you would have known how good this guy was.
I've been saying this for years. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't expect him to make it that competitive.
I thought he made it closer than the other guys did.
And I think the other good thing as well, I mean, we will get to fight number 3, but I just want to bring this up while I can. I think there were maybe some people who were getting a little bit carried away about how good Pantoja was. I think he's very talented, but there were people out there saying, oh, he's cleaned out the division and he's never going to lose. Having Erceg put on that kind of performance, I think it made people realise, hey, we started to get a little bit too carried away here.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was so much fun. The fight was actually really good.
Yeah, I love that fight.
I legitimately wish, what's it called? I wish we all knew that fight was going to be good because I got to watch it alone in my room because no one wanted to watch that card. And I'm like, oh, I said I would, so I'm going to watch it.
Fight number 3, and we are going back to the middleweight division, and so is Kevin Holland. He's going to be taking on, I hope I pronounce this right, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, and he is the bookmaker's favourite to get a victory here, -250 to Mikhail's +200. So this is going to be the first time in about 4 or 5 fights that Kevin Holland is going to be back at 185. Is this a short-term move just to get him onto the card, bit of a payday for Kevin, or is this him saying, I've tried the 170 thing, didn't really work out for me, I'm going to go back to where I found most of my success first time?
I hope it's the latter, but it's more likely the former, because I thought at welterweight he's going to do really good. I didn't think he was... I think we knew where his ceiling was. like he was going to struggle against the guys who are just better. You know, there's guys who are just better than him, but he was going to be very good. I thought he would be like around that top 5, never getting a title shot. But man, he just didn't have as much success as I thought. I thought he was going to do a lot better, and it wasn't that great. And he had a lot more success at middleweight, funny enough. And I feel like he's probably like, hey, maybe I can make middleweight work. Maybe I can do that again. He's probably in his mind going, I can beat Sean Strickland. Yeah, I'll do it.
Like, personally, I've always said, and I say this for a lot of different weight classes, is even if you physically are better at your ideal weight, sometimes, you can look at the weight class above or the weight class below, but certainly the one above, and think, if the talent pool is a little bit thinner, you know what, I'll sacrifice a little bit in terms of size and try and make a run there. Like, I've seen a lot of people do that recently. Like, I've personally argued, especially after Myra went on that run to the title, like a lot of sort of mid-level 125ers could move to 135 and take advantage of the sort of aging, weaker talent pool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, if you're someone like
110%.
Chukagian or, I don't know, Jasmine Jesuda Vicious, someone of that sort of like...
Admittingly, Valentina, I think is going to go back.
I think if she...
I'm not making a crack here.
If she loses to Grasso, I could see it.
I think so. I think obviously she's going to lose again. Come on. There's not even a point having the fight. Wait, what's the score now? 3-0?
You've been going to the Jack Slack school of trying to rile up the Chev fans, haven't you? It's all in good fun. A lot of the jokes and a lot of the jabs we make on this show are all in jest. Like, but it's exaggerating characters. It's like Jack Slack with Musasi. He doesn't genuinely hate Musasi. He's just sort of, that's his sense of humor.
Yeah, I got nothing but love for all our Chev fans, for all our fans, honestly. But I think at this point, everyone, when I first was on the show, it was like a little bit of like, well, this guy talking bad about my girl, and I'm like, well, hold on, guys. I come in peace. I'm here to have fun, like, but yeah, no, I think absolutely. And middleweight, let's be honest, middleweight needs help. Like, middleweight needs help. We got who else is at middleweight right now? Rob, Izzy,
Brendan Allen.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Brendan Allen.
I like Brendan Allen.
Me too. He's fun. Chao Borayo, he's kind of popping up, but I think he's got like 2 or 3 wins before we start, or maybe 2 wins before we really consider him.
I want Fluffy to make a big jump. I think Fluffy should be getting someone just outside the top 5 or 6.
Admittingly, I kind of want Fluffy Chao Borayo to go at it and be like, all right, only one of you can win. The guy with an awesome nickname or educated Paulo Costa. Like, let's do this. But
the other thing that stands out for me with Kevin Holland, and another reason why he might be considering moving up, I don't know about you, I got the impression that I think a lot of people have always enjoyed Kevin Holland as maybe not so much at like a title level, but as that sort of like entertaining action fighter. You can put him on a main card, he's always going to deliver. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of people were a bit burned by MVP. And I don't know if that's because Holland underperformed or people have this sort of stigma against Bellator and didn't see MVP as high level, but I think a lot of people jumped off that train after that fight. It's just my sort of hunch.
I kind of feel like that too. I don't remember what you picked, but I picked him to beat MVP, so I looked real stupid. But I think, admittingly, he was my fighter of the year in 2020. Like, it was him or Figgy, and Figgy had a draw at the end. So I went, okay, I'm going to give it to Kevin Holland, because Kevin Holland ended that year with the insane Jacare KO, which is like, what? And he had 5 wins in a calendar year? That's insane. Like, he was ridiculous. And then it was like, like, here comes Derek Brunson, lay and pray. Marvin Vittori, lay and pray. Kyle Dawkins, Henry Cejudo'd him. I was like, oh man, like so the hype wore off, then the Dirty Cowboy win, Tim Means win, he's back. Then he had to deal with Hamzat, which no one has fun with that. Like fighters and fans of Karl don't have fun with the Hamzat fights. I like watching him fight. I hate listening to him talk.
He's a moron.
Oh god, it's so funny. He's such a meathead.
Yes, the good word, good word, better word.
Yeah, he's such a meathead. Like, I do love that picture of him sitting on the cage, just relaxing and watching Kevin Holland walk out. When with Darren Till, like that's kind of funny, but at the same time, like, he's such a dork.
I like that one with him flat on his face after Gilbert drops him.
Fight's insane. Dude, I still think about this. Like, what if Gilbert let that soccer kick rip? Like, what does MMA look like after that? Like,
Raiders Stadium has its first touchdown because it's going over the sticks.
Absolutely. My dad was a Raiders fan, so I take some offense with that. And by proxy, that makes it, it's kind of like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction. Like his girlfriend's a vegetarian, so that practically makes him a vegetarian. My dad was a Raiders fan, so that practically makes me a Raiders fan. Yeah, no, that's a clobbered him. That would have been America's first Olympic gold. like counted that for ourselves. Yeah, and I would have been the one going goal. I would have unlocked. Every Mexican has the power to unleash their announcer for football games, soccer games, and my power would have unlocked in that moment.
There are
that would have been my avatar state.
There are two sides to this fight, though, so we're going to talk a little bit about his opponent, and then we'll get into the X's and O's, strengths and weaknesses of either fighter. And the opponent in question is Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, 19-7, and he's another guy as well who is pursuing ventures in a different weight class. So he started his career as a light heavyweight, and then moved down to middleweight. Some of the notable wins during this time include Chidi Njokuani, Cody Brundage, Sam Alvey, which was Sam's last fight in the UFC, Modestus Bukauskas, and Jean Vellante. So, sort of like middle-of-the-road fighters in two weight classes. Are there any things in particular that stand out for you when it comes to Mikhail? Like, the thing that I mainly took note of, a lot of movement, especially when he was a 205. There was a lot of movement, a lot of sort of like sideways, and I think that really did throw a lot of the slower 205ers off the guard a bit.
He's got some feet work, his feet work. I would probably, because whenever I think of because he kind of feels like an older school fighter to me, not like early 2000s, but more like mid 2010s kind of era fighter, maybe like late 2000s, mid 2010s era. Because when I think of feet work at the heavier divisions, like light heavyweight, I think of Ben Rothwell at heavyweight.
Is that him doing his stance after beating Overeem?
That was him. He basically the same thing. That's him when he's chasing down Brandon Vera after getting smoked for 2 rounds. He's like dancing like Shepard in Mass Effect, it's so funny. But that's like the feet work I always think of when it comes to. And then now we have like a guy like Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gahn who are like, oh, these guys actually have footwork. What? And especially Tom Aspinall, underrated footwork on him. But yeah, he's kind of got like a meat and potatoes kind of like big, like he has a lot of power, and his technique isn't incredible to me, but he hits really hard and puts people out for the count. Like when he was going to fight Michelle Pereira, I was like, oh, that fight actually sounds really fun. That fight sounds awesome. And then it turns out, oh, well, Michelle Pereira is probably some new blood at middleweight, actually. He's been looking very good.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm hoping he makes this run and takes off with it. but like just a lot of power, a lot of feet work, and if he puts it on you, like him and Chidi and Jaquani is on. I remember on paper going like, "Oh, this fight's gonna be awesome. Is this gonna be fight of the night?" And it didn't even last that long. And he's tough. He nearly got put out a couple times in that fight, if I remember right, and then just came back and like both those dudes bombed on each other. And he has a win over Sam Alvey, who once said UFC fighters get paid more than enough. So I will forever like him for that.
If there is one big weakness when it comes to Mikhail, it's his grappling. 42% takedown defense, and of his 7 career losses, 5 have come by submission. The problem is, we know the type of fighter that Kevin Holland is. Like, Kevin Holland has a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Travis Lutter. He does have submissions on his record, 8 of them. But I do think there's an element of ego when it comes to Kevin Holland. He wants to try and prove himself as a striker and go toe-to-toe with guys who are far better than him in these areas. We saw that when he fought against Wonderboy. Like, there were a couple of times that Wonderboy would slip or get tripped, and Holland would sort of like welcome him back to his feet. He tried to stand again with MVP when there was a big grappling advantage. So, unless Kevin Holland fights smart, I think we're just going to see another stand-up fight. And when you're going up against a guy like Mikhail, whose last 4 wins have been first-round KOs, there's always going to be that element of danger.
It's. I mean, Kevin Holland's got a great chin.
Yes.
A really good chin. And he's going to be at middleweight where he'll be less dehydrated, which means his chin and durability will naturally be improved. I still think it's a big red flag to try and stand and bang with this guy. Then again, I don't think that's going to stop him. Like, I'm trying to.
I can't see Mikhail finishing Holland because of that chin.
No, I don't see it either. But I can see him beating him up for 3 rounds. I can see it. I don't think it's going to happen, spoiler alert. I will be picking Kevin Holland to win, but I can definitely see that as a road out of here. I don't see a road where Mikhail drops the hammer and stiffens Kevin Holland, personally.
The only way I could see it happen, though, is if, like, Mikhail's style is very aggressive. And again, as mentioned before, a lot of lateral movement to get inside, to get the pocket. And that doesn't really work well for a guy in Kevin Holland who likes a lot of space to set up his shots. Like, you sort of like push back on Kevin Holland, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to overextend. It's quite similar to Randy Brown in that regard. And like, I could see Mikhail maybe giving Kevin Holland some problems in that regard if he is able to keep the pressure on. But with Kevin Holland's chin, I don't think he's going to land that big power punch to put him out. And if it does start going into the 2nd and 3rd rounds, I have question marks over whether Mikhail is going to be that same potent threat.
It's for me, I think of it as, if he's gonna do it, it would probably be against the cage. He'd have to pressure him to the cage and then try and get it done against there. But Kevin Holland's got some tools to help him create space. He's not the best at it. I wish he had a little bit more in his bag for it. But he does have a jab. He has a great teep kick. Doesn't have the double leg to tie that up. But I think for sure and he does have pop in his hands. Like he's got hands. He's got power, elbows, knees. He's got power for sure. Because Joaquin Buckley's been making everybody upset with him just talking a lot of trash. Like recently, he took a crack at GSP, like the GOAT, and Cub Swanson had to step in and be like, "Calm down." And then he tried to like muscle up on Cub Swanson. It's like, what are you doing? This guy's a dork. I was actually about to start liking him, and then all this is like kind of killed it for me with Buckley. But everyone's been sharing the picture of Buckley getting clobbered by Kevin Holland. So he definitely has oomph for sure. And Uh, this fight's actually pretty fun. I think this is probably the sleeper fight of the night for a lot of people. That's definitely why it is where it is, and I think that's one reason why. I think that's one reason why they probably approached Kevin Holland to get him on this card for one to help it out. You know,
And Kevin Holland's going to enjoy the payday.
yeah, he likes money, and I don't blame him.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a gamble that's going to work for Kevin Holland as well. I think that even though there's elements of ego in play, and the MVP loss like really did hurt his stock, I don't see enough in Mikhail to make me think that he's going to overcome that. Like, the only way I can see Mikhail winning is by a first round KO, and I think Kevin Holland's too good for that to happen, in my opinion.
I think he's too durable and
Yes.
he's too good. Yeah, because I think Kevin Holland is probably, at least before he left the first time, I thought he was probably still around the 8 or 7 number in the division. You know, it's like, oh, he just can't wrestle. Like, that's fine. I still love the video of Habib like, stop talking, just wrestle. Hey man, should I do it like this? Stop talking, just wrestle. Like, it's so funny. But I kind of miss Habib. I was thinking about that this week. I was like, do I find myself missing him? But yeah, I mean, I got Kevin Holland. I think he does it. Does he finish Mikhail?
Holland has power.
Yeah, and Mikhail is sometimes open on the counter. He's been put out before. I don't think he has the craziest chin. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to take this shot. I think he's going to finish him in the third round. Second or third round, but I'm going to lean third.
Yeah, I'm going to go decision. I'm going to go Kevin Holland decision.
I think I convinced myself.
I could maybe see Mikhail winning the first round. I could see a situation where he possibly rocks Kevin Holland, but doesn't put him out.
Absolutely. Kind of like, Thiago Santos couldn't put him out. Like, prime middleweight Thiago Santos with that Thor's hammer on his chest, chock full of, I don't care. He had to have been on the secret juice, Paulo Costa style. Like, not Thiago Silva. Thiago Santos was huge at Bud 205 also. Jeez.
Tell you what, good thing you brought up Paulo Costa, because who are we talking about next? It's almost as if you planned it, Joe. Yes,
Yeah, Sean Strickland.
Sean Strickland is going to be taking on Paulo Costa in the middleweight division, and it's going to be taking place over 5 rounds as well. So Strickland is a minus 205 favourite. Costa comes in at plus 170. So we're going to start a little bit by talking about Sean Strickland in a little bit more detail here, because obviously after UFC 293, the upset win over Adesanya, Sean Strickland suddenly becomes this overnight, I wouldn't say sensation, but I think a lot of people that were sort of like morbidly amused by Sean Strickland gave him a begrudging respect. And I think a lot of the people who used to be like the big Colby Covington fans, they sort of transferred their support over to him. And going into UFC 297, I think there was, even though the card itself wasn't the greatest card, and yeah, DDP was sort of like home as a title fight, I would say people weren't upset by the idea of Sean Strickland headlining that fight card.
No.
Do you feel that the sort of charm of Sean Strickland is still there? Because I feel like even those people who are like the proper diehards of Strickland, sort of like the former Colby fans, even they seem a bit, I'm not really bothered anymore.
It's kind of weird, and I'm trying my hardest to not offend any political thing. It's because my personal opinion on politics is I could care less. It affects me, and I wish I cared more, but I just can't. I voted twice in my life. I won't be doing it again, and that's just me, right? But. And it's kind of hard, and I say that disclaimer because with Sean Strickland and Colby Covington, there's a lot of political dealings around them in a sense. Like, so with Colby Covington, I always found it interesting that for a guy who complains about like snowflakes, XYZ, and calling everybody nerds, paying very uninterested strippers to be in promo videos with him, which is actually really funny. I think that's if he was doing. I think it's a character with Colby, and I don't think he's lost in the sauce. I think he's just playing the character, and I think Masvidal, who is his friend, was like, "Man, he's being serious. We got to kick him out." I think it was supposed to be like that because I think Masvidal's too literal. I think it just went over his head. But I think with Colby's mostly a character, so I think that's actually a genius move to hire very uninterested strippers to be in videos with him. That's so funny. But he complains a lot, I had Marty fake newsman hurt, and then he faked an eye poke, which he did, or he faked a low blow. It's like, yeah, he did. And then it's like, blah blah. I definitely beat Leon Edwards by not doing anything for 4 rounds. It's all this complaining. Admittingly a very good line. I wasn't knocked down. I was taking a knee for first responders. Legitimately a very good line from Colby Covington. And Sean Strickland's kind of similar because he's part of that whole, what's the word? Like red-pilled, conservative, to make men masculine and alpha male kind of vibe he's got with Sean Strickland. To his credit, he's never called himself an alpha male. At least I hope not, because the second you call yourself an alpha, you're not one, is kind of my vibe. It's like, why do you need to tell us you're awesome? Like, I would just know if you're cool or not. Like,
I thought you were gonna say when you get called an alpha male, you like shrink down 5 inches and start jumping for guillotines.
Hell yeah. He's the manliest man of all time, Dustin Poirier, with an S tier hot sauce, unironically.
No, I was talking about Team Alpha Male.
Team Alpha Male.
Like Faber, Chad Mendez.
I was thinking. I thought you're calling Dustin Poirier an alpha male, because I was thinking I'm still guillotine crazy. But oh my god, is that where did he leave American Top Team to go babysit the toddlers? Dustin Poirier secretly training with our new headline. We can have those big fake clickbait thumbnails that OOC hates. Like, here's a plane and a baby, Team Alpha Male. I haven't heard him talk about Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw yet, so probably not. But I think a lot of it is like Sean Strickland went on a crusade of complaining about the judge's decision, which I did rewatch that fight. That fight's really close, actually. At the time I said Strickland win. Now I don't know if I could pick a winner. I probably still lean Strickland, but I understand DDP winning. Excuse me. I think. I'm trying to think what it is. It definitely kind of feels like him complaining about everything really soured everybody.
Yeah.
And I think another thing, too, is that shtick is very funny and interesting when you're champion. And now that we've had a taste for what that shtick was like when he had a belt around his waist, it just isn't the same. And it's kind of hurts. Because I thought his shtick went from, this is really funny, to, oh my god, you were totally right about no one's going to beat you if they watch cartoons. Corn, we'll say. Cartoon corn, and he beat Izzy after saying that. That elevated it, and then he lost the belt, and it's like, okay, we're back down to where we were, and it just isn't the same.
Yeah, the way I sort of looked at Sean Strickland was kind of like, sometimes if you're watching like a sitcom or a cartoon or something like that, you'll have these characters who'll say these sort of like weird, outlandish things, and they can be hilarious, but you wouldn't want that character to be like the lead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, imagine if The Office was built entirely around Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Kelly says...
Yeah,
Kelly's great in small doses, funny character, but you wouldn't want an entire show about her.
I guess it's like, maybe like the Frank Reynolds in Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
with Danny DeVito.
That's a better
character.
comparison than mine.
Yeah, I mean, he is the trash man, who's who's in everyone's boy stable.
So, did the Sean Strickland that we saw against Dricus du Plessis, were there any sort of new intangibles to his game? Where do you think it went wrong for Strickland? Was it purely just not having the wrestling to handle DDP's takedowns? Or do you think there was anything else that he was sort of like a bit lackluster in?
I was surprised he couldn't deal with the takedowns. Like, I'm still kind of surprised he couldn't deal with the takedowns, because on paper he's the better wrestler with his like background and everything like that. But I think a lot of it too is dude just has no power. Like, we all need to make a formal apology to Michael Bisping, because he was known as the softest hands in the middleweight division forever, and I think we need to upgrade him and downgrade Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is as the softest hands I think I've seen in middleweight, because he lights guys up, and he clearly has power in his right hand. He just throws like 800 jabs with no pop and a slapping left hook that does nothing. And it's like, oh my God. And he lights guys up with it. But if he had a little bit more power, because du Plessis is gassing, he's eating tons of shots, and he just doesn't have the power to put him out. And it was so frustrating watching that. So I think as big as he is, because he is a big guy, and it's funny because he moved up from 170 to 185. So I thought, he'll retain like a lot of more muscle mass, but he's just kind of built lanky, like a lanky big. You know, the name Tarzan fits very well for him, admittingly. But he doesn't seem like he's the strongest guy at middleweight. I think du Plessis was able just to surprisingly had the better wrestling that night and is a lot stronger than him. Just, you know, his with because I mean, du Plessis' shoulders look like wings on a bird. He is built like a Doritos.
You've actually brought up a really good point there, and I was just thinking about that when you were listing like the guys that Strickland's lost to. If you look at this sort of like later run of his career, so I'm not talking like, I'm going to talk like middleweight here. The guys who've beaten him have guys who are physically a lot bigger than Sean Strickland. Because obviously you bring up like DDP, Pereira, and also Jared Cannonier, just proper muscle upon muscle, talky types. And I think they were able to find so much success just by sort of like bullying with power, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And look who he's fighting.
Yes.
The second most juiced up guy I've ever seen at middleweight.
And it's funny as well that we talked about Sean Strickland and how that loss possibly hurt his stock. I think Paulo Costa against Robert Whittaker, in a strange way, I think that kind of repaired a lot of his stock, because Costa had this reputation of being very inactive, ducking fights. He was more known for sort of like clowning around on social media. And he got a much more competitive fight out of Robert Whittaker than many expected.
I thought Rob was going to run through him and win a decision. No. He made it a fight. He only had like a couple of moments of success, but he used that moment to kind of he used those moments to extend his success time, if that makes sense. Like, I thought he was losing, then he lands the wheel kick and you go, oh, all right, like this got interesting. And then he had Rob hurt and was able to try and use that momentum, keep working for a finish while still landing consistent damage. And Rob is just Rob. Like, sadly, he feels like he's perpetually the number 2 guy at middleweight, which sucks for me, because I'm a massive Rob fan. But yeah, we talked about that with the Rob Paulo Costa breakdown whenever we were doing that. How funny how Paulo Costa beating Luke Rockhold, a former champion, one of the in terms of talent, one of the greatest ever in terms of talent, at least, and beats him, and it didn't really do anything for his stock because everyone after the fight was talking about Rockhold in that fight. And then here's Paulo Costa losing to Robert Whittaker, and it raised his stock. Like, the parallels are awesome.
I have to be honest, like, pissed off, I can't give a stuff Rockhold might be my favorite incarnation of him.
Yes, that's my favorite too. Him angry, beat up, and tired and exhausted, just bleeding. Like, I watched that fight twice, by the way, this week for once for research and once because I was like kind of bored and tired on a Thursday, and I gotta check this out. And what's it called? It was so funny. Uh, I was cracking up just at Luke Rockhold, tired, beaten up. His face is a bloody mess, exhausted, and just yelling "F off" and throwing like a haymaker of a left hand, and it's stunning Costa for a second is unbelievable. And then he hits him with the Edward Norton in Fight Club moment where they're like he's on top of Paulo Costa and just you don't know where I've been. Like, oh my god, it's an incredible fight. Like, that's almost as like because we saw that with Dustin Poirier and Chandler, just the bleeding all over your opponent as an attack, and Luke Rockhold took it to the next level. It was disgusting and awesome. That weird barbaric part of my mind, like, just it came out and was like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is why I love this sport. It was
Yeah.
chef's kiss of a fight.
A really fun fight. And as you mentioned before, as good of a fight as it was, entertaining, I think the Costa was expected to run through Rockhold. And the fact he wasn't able to do so, I think it did hurt him.
Yeah.
And I will say as well, like, a lot of people are starting to get this reputation with Paulo Costa, 14-3 record, that he is a bit pillow-fisted himself. I think people look at the muscle and the physique and expect him to just be like this knockout artist in the way that someone like a Yoel Romero was. Mm-hmm. So in a way, he's a bit of a frail whale in that regard. But you actually look at his finishing record, like, up until, 2019, he'd finished pretty much all of his opponents.
He's only 2 decisions in his career.
Yeah.
One to Yoel Romero, who is a freak of nature. Probably him. Yoel Romero was either made in a lab in Cuba, or he's been on steroids since he was 12.
Steroids? No way.
There's no chance, right? Obviously, 0 chance. I still love. I think it was Jack Slack that called their matchup the juiciest fight in MMA history. It was like, yeah. Where's my juice box at? Like, this is Yoel Romero. He's gonna get smashed.
Like, one of my
Tito Ortiz style.
One of my favorite. Like, again, I don't like patting myself on the back when it comes to this show, but I had a lot of casual friends who were interested in 241. Like, some of them were drawn in by heavyweight title V match. Some thought, oh, Nate's back on the card, I want to see this. And I was telling everyone, no, Romero versus Costa is the fight you need to watch. And it was. I love that fight.
It's one of my favorite cards of all time, honestly. Like, that's up there. Like, Derek Brunson, Ian Heinisch, whatever. Like, hey, they can't all be hits. But Sadiq Youssef, I like Sadiq Youssef a lot. It's fantastic. Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero is a brawl for the ages. Like, I love that picture of Paulo Costa kicking Yoel Romero in the head, and like his face like contorting around his shin is unbelievable. Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, that fight's actually not bad. I remember not liking it at the time, but it's actually a not bad fight. It's kind of funny how Nate Diaz beats him. He just grapples and wrestles him. That's not what Nate does.
Oh, you're a wrestler now.
Oh, you're a wrestler now. I mean, that's one of the greatest lines of all time. I want him to go to WWE so that can be his, like, the song. You know how, like, Stone Cold has, like, the glass shatter? That's what Nate Diaz, like, his thing before his song. Oh, you're a wrestler now. And then Nate Diaz walks out.
I thought you were going to say Alpha Man's because I got high.
Okay, that's what it should be. Yeah, dude, oh my God. We're going to have to bring Matt Riddle back. Or actually just Nate Diaz and Randy Orton again. Just keep pairing Randy Orton with potheads and like let it rip. Randy Orton RK420, like with RVD. Let's do it. RVD KO, but in the Stipe DC too, which is the equivalent of Homer Simpson fighting Dietrich Tatum. He just like then eventually realized, wait a minute, what if I body shot this guy when he's trying to hand check me? And it's like 14 body shots and like liver punches in a row, and it's the greatest thing ever. That's probably one of the most hyped I've ever been for like a fight finish. I think only recently has that been like that's been topped before, but there's one fight in particular this year which made me go, "Oh, I'm never going to react like this ever for a fight ever." And we all know what fight that was.
Julie and the jabs heard around the world.
Yeah, no, it was Rocky getting her title. I was like, never gonna react like this again.
Like
With
just
joy and apathy.
I like the guy who, you know how the fighters go into the corner to get the instructions and then they go back, and there's always like this roar from the crowd of like, oh, here we go, title fight, and someone described the crowd reaction as polite mumbling.
It's so funny. I like to imagine in my head when I think about that fight. I remember them getting ready for the final round, and you know, I've talked about it on the Retro Review series, UFC 68. The roar of the crowd for Randy is unlike anything I've ever heard. Like that's probably the loudest fight I've ever watched, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. And I like to imagine in my head when I remember Pennington, Myra Bueno Silva, that it's like the crowd's like, yeah, okay, we're here. And it's like really dead quiet, but then we can hear you in the UK and me in Oklahoma going, yeah, let's go, ladies. Like it's just I think you and me were the only two pumped for that fight. I was pumped by proxy because it's like, oh, you're my friend and I know you're excited, so that makes me excited. Like I was only pumped for that fight because of that.
Honestly, I had to rewatch. Like obviously, I rewatched Strickland versus DDP to do research for this show, and honestly, I can't remember all that much about the fight when I watched the first time around because I was that invested in the core main. It was just like everything after that was a blur. It's like the same with Dustin versus Oliveira.
I that's actually a good comparison, Dustin Oliveira. You were like, what happened? I don't care. I need to go to the doctor. My knee is missing. That's kind of how Nate Diaz. Funny you bring that up because that's kind of how Nate Diaz, Pettis is for me. Because like Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa was so insane. You just go, oh, can I take a break? Like, oh, like you have that post, the stereotype of like the cigarette afterwards. Oh. Whew. It was ridiculous.
So do I have
it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because like, you know, I think that's something that's could potentially happen here is like I think in MMA you never know how a fight's gonna be. We've seen two people no one cares about put on a banger of a fight. Like I remember Shane Burgos and Calvin Kattar. That fight's incredible. And it was in like a weird placement on the card. And we were just like, yeah, sure, we'll watch it. You know, like why not? Like this will be a good fight for us to take a break on and like relax and kind of calm down. And it just blew up and it's a great fight. Like we were blown away. You never really know how good a fight's going to be. Like every fight has the potential to be a banger. Every fight has the potential to be a stinger. It's kind of a benefit pro wrestling will be like, wow, that was an incredible match between Jon Moxley returning and taking on Seth Rollins, 5 out of 5 stars. All right, here's Liv Morgan versus 9 minutes, so you can catch your breath, like, you know, because here's Maxine Dupree against Nia Jax for 5 minutes. Go take your break. We know you need to come down and relax. We don't really have that benefit in MMA because it's like, oh, I need to take a break. What fight is this? Yeltsin Almeida. Okay, that's as sure as a break I'm gonna get.
Normally what I do is I sort of think to myself, I almost put it together like a jigsaw, in that how does one fighter's strengths like sort of like work into another fighter's weakness? How does their styles, etc.? That's the way I look at it. And
Yeah.
I bring this up because I actually do think that a lot of the strengths that one fighter has can exploit the weaknesses of others, because we know that Strickland likes to use that Philly shell. And it is
Yeah.
great defensively when it comes to strikes to the head.
Punches.
And he's great at countering, he's great at parrying, and that's largely where he found a lot of his success in his run up the rankings. But I think using that shell, it makes body kicks a lot harder to defend. And Paulo Costa can fire some huge body kicks with a lot of power.
It makes kicks in general hard to defend.
But
Because remember, the two best Philly shell users in MMA are on this card. If you had Bobby Green on this card, it's like you have the 3 best Philly shell guys in MMA history on this card. And Dustin Poirier's last loss was because someone went high with a kick and he was Philly shelling. Like, I think, and Paulo Costa, as Yoel Romero's malformed face can tell you, can definitely kick high.
And then on the other side of things, Paulo Costa's weakness has always been cardio and straight punches, and he's going 5 rounds against one of the best jabbers in the division.
Yeah, I didn't know it was 5 rounds. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the big.
Actually, a lot of fun.
It's one of the big reasons why I'm favouring Strickland to win this one.
Strickland. Yeah.
I actually think over 3 rounds it would be a lot more competitive, because I think the second could be close, but having the extra 5 pushes me into Sean Strickland's category, and I think he's going to win this one 49-46.
I think 48-47. Because I was going to pick Paulo Costa to win this fight, actually, when I thought it was 3 rounds. The second you said it's 5 rounds, I just went, okay, just add 2 more rounds to my prediction. What happens? Sean Strickland takes those rounds, wins 3-2. Because I have a prediction because as we know, Sean Strickland talks a lot in the cage. Actually, kind of funny how we have him and Kevin Holland back to back, 2 big talkers in there. That could be fun. Maybe we can tell the crowd to shut the hell up so we can hear him. No, kidding. I love you, New Jersey. Don't send Paulie at me.
The New Jersey crowds are nearly always quite good.
Actually, legitimately super. I love the Prudential Arena. Like, all the times we've gone back there, it's Prudential Arena's top notch. Because before New York, this is our New York, in a sense, it's close enough, right? Let's have fun here. Yeah, Sean, I imagine the first round and most of the second round is Paulo Costa landing a big shot and Sean Strickland going, "Oh, what'd you hit me for?" Oh, freaking out. And then I think you can fast forward to round 5, and it's kind of like the Jack Hermanson Sean Strickland moment of come on, Paulo, and him just jabbing away and yelling at him as Paulo Costa's clearly, his beach muscles have failed him once again. I think Sean Strickland 48-47. That's how the fight goes in my head.
Main event time, and we are a little bit pushed for time for this one, so we'll try and get as much as we can into these next 18 minutes or so. And the lightweight title is going to be on the line. Islam Makhachev is defending his belt against the number 4 seed Dustin Poirier. Makhachev, big favourite for this one, -480. Dustin Poirier comes in at +360. And I think the big thing that stands out for me in regards to this fight is I think there's been a real change in how the UFC are approaching their title fights and their matchmaking. It used to be that if there was a champion and a clear number 1 contender, the UFC would wait until both parties were ready and then build the fight and the card around that. So the one that always comes to mind for me, for example, is, let's say when DDP won the number 1 contender and it was going to be him versus Izzy. There would have been once upon a time, they would have waited the 5 or 6 months until both guys were ready. Nowadays, it's very much a case of, we want Izzy to fight in Australia. We've got this arena booked for August. He's going to be fighting regardless of who the opponent is. Do you like that approach from the UFC? Do you want it to go back to the way it used to be?
It needs to go back to the way it used to be. If that means we don't have a title fight on every pay-per-view card, I'm okay with it as long as you build around that. Because for me, I think I think we all can agree, matchmaking as a whole has kind of dipped in quality. Once again, ignore my Roman Delite wishes, and I think I'll be a great fit. Just let me have my one Roman Delite versus 15 Lions fight. And but all jokes aside, I think I remember back in the day, Mark Munoz and Chris Lieben headlined a pay per view. First pay per view was 5 rounds. Even it was free on TV for us, but it was a numbered event. Yeah, it was a numbered event, so maybe not pay per view, but like there was times where like Cain Velasquez and Minotauro Nogueira was a pay per view in Australia, actually, not a title fight. And what was the co-main event?
Bisping and Vanderlei.
And it was awesome. That fight's awesome. And what's it called? And another fight where Vanderlei nearly soccer kicked the guy. But yeah. I think we need more consistency in our matchmaking numbered cards quality, and I don't think there needs to be a pay-per-view on every fight. I don't like this trend. I like it as in terms of entertainment. It's like it keeps you invested. It feels like, but it just feels cheap. Yeah. I guess is the word I would use to keep it simple.
Because the reason I bring this up is because it was very clear after UFC 300, Arman Tsarukyan was the number one contender. And the fight to make was him versus Makhachev. But the UFC already had Makhachev in mind for this card. Tsarukyan didn't want to make a 2-month turnaround for another short notice fight against an opponent he'd already lost to, which I completely understand from Tsarukyan's point of view. And the highest ranked guy who was willing to take that fight was Dustin Poirier, who, as much as we love Dustin, he was coming into the fight off a 1-fight winning streak, having just beaten the number 12 guy.
Yeah. A guy a lot of people were really high on.
Admittedly, yes.
Still, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's still kind of, it's a weird situation. Like, the ranking of Benoit Saint-Denis, Benoit Saint-Denis, the ranking of him doesn't give the full grasp of that win. The gravity of that win, I guess, would be the better phrasing. That said, it's still like come on, towards the UFC. It was a bad taste in my mouth, admittingly.
Yeah. And I feel as well, and this might just be a little bit cynical on my point of view, I think that Islam Makhachev, on the whole, is a guy who I think the fan base respect, but they don't love. And the fans that do love him, in my opinion, do so for other reasons. I feel it's either guys who were Khabib fans and sort of transitioned their fandom over to him, or it's people who want to be seen as sort of like cool and hip and like support the guy who's winning. Oh, I'm a fan of the champion. That's how on the nose I am. It's kind of a bit of that. I can't help but feel like Dustin Poirier is a guy with a big name, a lot of star power, and a guy who, based on the rumours you're hearing, is maybe going to be hanging up the gloves soon. This feels a bit like sort of like feeding the young. I'm trying to think of the word.
Well, feeding the old to the young.
Feeding the old to the young. It's like, it's not this extreme, but it reminds me a little bit of when he poked Larry Holmes versus Muhammad Ali. That kind of fight. We've got this young champion, let's give him a legendary name to show how good he is, as it were. Larry Holmes
Tyson, admittingly.
Yeah. And I mean, Ali versus Holmes is awful to watch. It's sad.
I don't like to watch it. Larry Holmes is a lot of fun fights. I don't like to watch that fight.
Yeah.
I'm not even an Ali mega fan. I like Ali, I respect him, all this, but I don't want to watch that fight again. It kind of feels like you know what? I see what you're saying. I never thought about that. Surprisingly, me, the big conspiracy guy between us, I never thought about that, and I like that comparison. I think that makes a lot of sense. because basically what you're saying is Islam is Roman Reigns and Dustin Poirier is the dead man. No. WrestleMania, don't feed Taker to Roman. No,
And that
but
was a
no, it
bad
does
match. That
feel
was a bad match.
horrid.
And that was going to be
Horrid.
Taker's retirement as well.
I remember texting my friend because I was on a delay because I had to pause it at one point, and I said, "Do I have to finish this match? Can I just turn it off and go to bed?" And he goes, "You should stay, keep watching for the end." When he walks off, and I was like, "Okay, I'm glad I did that at least." But horrid match. Admittingly, I think I don't know. I feel like I love the joke that no one is actually an organic Makhachev fan. I think that's a really funny joke because it makes people upset, which means there must be some truth to it. And I don't mean that. I'm not trying to crap on our fans. Obviously, when I say that, I think that's mostly the Twitter crowd I'm taking a crack at, so to speak. But I think that's a funny joke, but I don't understand this pedestal we're putting Makhachev on right now. He's insane. He is incredibly good, and he deserves a lot of the praise he's getting. But I just want to talk about the facts. He beat Charles, sick, actually a huge win. He, depending on how you score it, he beat Volkanovski. In one of my favorite fights of all time, my fight of the year last year. I'm sure it was everybody's fight of the year last year. And then here comes Volkanovski on short notice on like 5 days, 6, 7 days, or whatever, and gets to duck Mateusz Gamrot, a definitely top 3 contender in his division, and KOs him because he was on short notice. And it's like, oh, like, come on, Like that isn't as big a feather in his cap. I don't like when people say he beat Volkanovski twice. He ruined Volkanovski. Like, no, hold on. Like, he beat him once. The other time, it's short notice. All this stuff, like it's a little bit different. I think people should be able to forgive Volkanovski and that last fight for Islam. It's an awkward situation.
In my opinion, so yes, that was not the best Volkanovski. Now, the 284 Volkanovski,
absolutely
fantastic fight. And I think Volk did show a lot of the ways that you can trouble Makhachev. Because I think
she did.
Like, I don't know about you, I think that Volk extending those grappling exchanges, I don't think Makhachev has the cardio. Like, and that's why I'm so intrigued by the Sarukian fight. Because if Sarukian on a full camp, and bearing in mind he's a lot more mature than he is, that to me is the fight I want to see, because I think Sarukian can extend those grappling exchanges and make it a lot more competitive.
I'm willing to stick my neck out here on this. I'm predicting now, if Makhachev and Sarukian fight for the title, we have a new champ. I think we have a new champ. Sarukian is so impressive to me. And his fight with Charles made me go, "Oh yeah, you're winning this title, aren't you?" Like, I didn't think he was going to beat Charles like that. And I mean, he didn't dominate him. I mean, he beat him pretty clean, I thought, outside of some scary moments. But the only threat to Sarukian right now for me is if that fan decides he wants to sue.
One thing
I'm very high on Sarukian.
The one thing I will say as well, when you look at Makhachev's record, and we're seeing a lot more fans in this sport becoming obsessed with the O against the fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Makhachev has the 1. And the 1 came at UFC 192, Adriano Martins. Heavy-handed southpaw, big left hand early in the fight. Who was another heavy-handed southpaw? Dustin Poirier.
Conor McGregor. Oh, I was kidding.
Well, I know Conor's trying to hype up his own fight, and him picking Dustin to win would make Conor look good because Dustin has the 2 wins. But Conor's picking Dustin to win this fight.
Yeah, and admittingly, his analysis of the fight, I thought was very good.
So are we...
I'm not a Conor fan, as we all know, and I will say, shout out to Conor. That was a pretty good analysis, I thought.
So are we writing off Dustin Poirier a little bit more than others are here? Is there a chance?
Oh, I think there's absolutely a chance. In fact, I'm kind of talking myself out of being a ridiculous man and picking him right now.
Yeah, I'm going to be.
If I pick Dustin, I'm only picking Dustin because I'm a fan of it.
Well,
And that's where the trouble is for me.
Well, I'm looking at the poll right now that we ran on the YouTube page. 65% are picking Makhachev, 35% are picking Dustin. So there are Dustin fans out there who are giving him a little bit of support. There was one guy, though, which made a comment which I thought was quite funny, which was Jeff Monson promo, Islam Makhachev. So I don't know if that's what Jeff Monson was going to do to Mark Kerr or what Jeff Monson asks at the start of the promo.
I like to think both.
We're a PG show, so we won't mention what that is, but I do recommend people look up the Jeff Monson promo.
Oh, trust me, you won't regret it. I promise that. I sadly have to pick Makhachev here by submission.
Yeah, I think that I don't think that Dustin has the grappling defense, and Makhachev doesn't fall into the same traps that maybe Khabib did. Because Khabib could be a little bit too over-aggressive to go for the takedown. Makhachev is a lot more careful, a lot more clinical, and he doesn't get hit. And the only way you do start finding success against him is when you tire him out like Volk did. And I don't think Dustin's going to drag him into those deep waters.
One thing interesting I will bring up. Dustin Poirier is a right-handed southpaw. So his power hand, I believe, is his right hook, which when you think about his fights, it kind of makes sense. He does hurt people a lot with like stance switch right hands. And like he nearly knocked out or at least knocked down Max Holloway with that. So when he steps in, if Islam decides to step in and he isn't careful, that check right hook is right there for him, and that's the power hand that's making the shortest distance to the chin. So Poirier can easily beat Makhachev, or there's a very good chance Poirier knocks out Makhachev. I think it's just not gonna happen. Like, my brain is Makhachev, my heart says Poirier. I've lost so many predictions betting on my heart, not my brain. I have to calm it down and go with my brain here.
My hotter take when it comes to this fight is I could possibly see Makhachev rocking or dropping Poirier. And I say this for this reason. I think Makhachev, I think people are starting to realize how good Makhachev's hands are, which
it's very good hands.
I think people see like the Dagestani fighters and just think all they do is wrestle. But I think as well, Dustin is going to be so aware of the takedown that he's going to leave himself open. It's sort of like a Randleman Crocop situation. And as he's thinking he's going to shoot, that's when Makhachev comes in with like a big left or a big right.
I think I think the kicks as well, because Makhachev always, before the head kick, no one was talking about his kicks. I thought he always had pretty good kicks. It was his left straight, I thought, was his best weapon on the feet, but his kicks were good. And once again, Philly shell, you kind of worry about the kicks.
Yes. We'll just wrap this up and then we'll try and get to the end of the show because we are a little bit pushed for time, unfortunately. One last thing I'll say. Dustin Poirier has turned jumping the ghillie into a meme. Could you imagine if this is the time, in what's likely to be his final fight, win or lose, could you imagine if this is the time that he actually works?
I would probably cry tears of joy. If he wins an undisputed title by jumping a ghillie in his last fight ever, I think it would top Robbie Lawler as the best send-off in recent memory.
Like, who was the last? Who was the last fighter to win a title by ghillie? Was it Verdum versus Kane?
I think so. I know the last time a title was defended with a ghillie. Figueiredo, Alex Perez.
Yes. I might put it to the Twitterverse to see what they think, see if they can remind us.
I'm going through all of them in my head, and I keep getting stuck on one fight. Every time I get to it, from this direction or the other direction, I go, can I just think about this fight for a while? It's a little known fight in a little known title fight where someone got rear naked choked by trying to do a spinning back kick while they were getting backed against the cage. It's a little known women's MMA fight.
Yeah, I think I got a last one in there, Joe.
On the way out, they can't catch me.
What's the word? Like you set fire to the house and made a bowl for it?
I like to think of it as taking a big fart as I leave the room.
And on that cheery note, it is time for us to bring an end to the UFC preview show. Once again, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure for you to be joining me for this next 2 and a bit hours of the show. And we always have a good bit of fun. Before we leave, however, it's going to be a very busy month in June on the live channel. So can you give us a little bit of a taster of what we can expect? In particular, what are our 2 retro reviews which we'll be seeing there?
I have fantastic news. First is we have 2 retro reviews. 2 retro reviews coming out in June, hopefully. But the other fantastic news, the more important news, is I won't look stupid because I actually have the poll here for once. But the first one is a Patreon request for 165 Jones versus Gustafsson. It's a card a lot of people fondly remember. I get to tell you why we shouldn't remember it so fondly. I'm kidding. It's fine. But the main event is fantastic and a very close classic fight. Is this John Jones's first time the judges have bailed him out? Yeah. Kinda. I think so. I don't know. I still kind of go back and forth on it. But and that it's fantastic. That card's fun. I love making fun of John Jones, so of course there's going to be a lot of that. And secondly, we asked you guys, it's June coming up. It's Pride Month. We can't not do the meme. We kind of have to. Plus, Pride's my favorite organization ever. So let's celebrate Pride Fighting Championship by doing 4. We put a poll out for 4 cards. It's Total Elimination 2003, Critical Countdown 2004, Shockwave 2004, or Pride Final Conflict 2005. And we put it to the vote, and winning with 46% of the vote, literally doubled the number 2, which was Total Elimination 2003, Final Conflict 2005, which features like the headliner for that card. If you don't know, now you know. I think this is the greatest heavyweight fight of all time. And Mirko Cro Cop taking on the last Emperor, Fedor. Oh, Fedor Emelianenko versus Cro Cop. It's the best heavyweight fight ever. I think it's like Michael Jordan in basketball, or Travis Lutter in jiu-jitsu.
So that's what you can look forward to this month on INC Live. And if you want to nominate your own Patreon requests, you can do so at patreon.com/itsnotcagefighting. For just $1 a month, you get access to not only choosing a potential retro review nominee, you get access to videos early, stuff that YouTube had to make us take down because of copyright issues, and also as well, exclusive stuff including INC Uncaged, which hopefully me and Joe will record at some point over the next 2 days. For now though, this has been the UFC 302 preview show. My name has been Karl Bainbridge, that's been Joe Neal. And we'll see you again in just a few weeks' time, UFC 303, and the return of the Mac himself, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Bye-bye for now.